Welcome everybody to Virtual Edge 2011. We are getting ready to start, and Raul is going to be introducing our panel. But first, we're asking everybody to please hold your questions until the end of the presentations, and you can also post your questions to Twitter at the hashtag VES11D. And virtual audience, please do the same. Anyway, all yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Ken. Hi, everyone. I hope you guys had good lunch. I see that a lot of our friends and colleagues haven't joined us yet, but thank you for whoever is here on time. What impact are they having on the enterprise space, and how, you guys must be aware of social gaming. How many people here have played games on Facebook, MySpace? I guess mostly everyone, right? I hope. And that's true. It shows in numbers on Facebook. You look at the Facebook evaluation, look at the 300 million people playing games on Facebook. Now, this new generation, now they're coming into the enterprise, and they are going to get this very different experience in the enterprise where, we don't believe in all the 3D gaming and avatars, right? And here I am representing the enterprise, and I'll have David, who is a serial entrepreneur and a technology investor, a futurist. He has built 7 companies, and they have all been successful, including PeopleClick. And he's now currently the founder and CEO of VES140W. He will be representing social media. Welcome, David. And on left of David is Manu. Manu is into gaming. He has built games for Harrods Gaming, based in UK. They started a casino, and he built the games for them. Very successful out there. Thereafter, he moved into Cantor Gaming as a managing director, and Cantor Gaming is associated with Cantor Fitzgerald. Correct. Yep, and he is currently the CEO of Rising. And with that, let's get into the space, and let's talk about what social media and social gaming is doing to this virtual worlds that we are talking about. These both platforms have been precursors to what we are calling the virtual worlds and virtual environments, the trade shows and eventing industry. And what happens in social gaming and in social media kind of reflects out there. And 3D graphics and the virtual reality, this with V bringing in this motion sensing capability, and avatars are becoming all popular. We'll talk all about that. So with that, why don't you tell us about social media, David?
Sure. I was asked to give a kind of a state of the union on social media in the 3D world, 3D graphics, what is called the immersive internet or the 3D web. And I have a few slides. I'm going to take the next 2.5 minutes and talk about Web 3D platforms. That is what this session is about. Mythbusters, because I think there's a lot of myths out there about 3D platforms today. They were indeed all the rage a few years ago. 3D, according to Gartner and Forrester and these guys, we were all going to have an avatar, and it was going to be attending meetings and conferences and training, and it just didn't quite work out that way, at least not as quickly, and there were lots of reasons for that. So myth number 1 that I'd like to bust today is that Web 3D applications for business are difficult to learn and to use. And we remember just a few years ago that there were gigabyte downloads, there were firewall issues, you could never get the VoIP to work right. There were all kinds of issues integrating your learning to use them. You had to spend an hour on Orientation Island and learn how to fly, and you were walking into walls and looking stupid in front of your coworkers. But I would like to bust that myth, and I would like to say that today, if you haven't seen the Web 3D offerings in the last year, you haven't seen them. Because like all technologies, they're overhyped in the beginning, and then we all become disillusioned. Then the technologies mature, and then we really underestimate the dramatic impact that they're going to have on us. And so today, these platforms install in under a minute. They run as a browser plugin. They're 100% mouse driven. You don't even have to touch the keyboard. They have about a 30-second learning curve. And I believe that I'm going to demonstrate one of these shortly, and hopefully you'll believe that that myth is busted. Myth number 2 is that it's difficult to manage content in a 3D environment. I remember hearing a guy from Gartner who said you need 3 people, one to drive the avatar, one to do the talking, and one to change the slides. And then you can present virtually. And I said, if that's the case, then we'll never be using 3D applications. I don't believe that's the case today. I believe today the interfaces are easy enough and simple enough to get content in. We all remember even today, like in Second Life, where you have to take your PowerPoints and save out the slides one at a time as a JPEG image and pull them in and then hope you remember to name them in the right order. Today, you just drag your content in. Movie clips, PowerPoint, drag it, let it go in the 3D environment, and everyone in the room sees it, and you control it. It's literally that simple. And then being able to spread out the content. If you want to interact with a screen share or an application that you're sharing, you just double-click it, and it floats inside, so you don't have to leave the 3D environment now to work with that content. And the ability for everyone to share their screen at the same time. See, in a 3D environment, you have unlimited real estate for spreading that content out. Everyone can share their screen side by side. We can all collaborate that way. In-world, laser pointers, just much, much simpler, very easy, seamless, as easily as working with content on your desktop. Then the last myth that I'd like to bust in my State of the Union address is that Web 3D is kind of weird and impersonal. And this is a tough one. We remember the uncanny valley, as they call it, where the avatars get close to looking human, but not really, and it's kind of weird. And so many of the on-demand 3D applications, you look like something out of a SpongeBob cartoon, and the avatars were acting unnatural, and you could never really get down to business or learning because you were so distracted by how unreal and low fidelity the environment was. I don't believe that's the case anymore today. Today, you can upload a photo of yourself, and in a minute, you'll have an avatar that others will immediately recognize as you. You can even tell it your typical facial expressions that you're going to use, how often, what postures you typically sit in, how much you use your hands while you're talking. So there's all very, very natural. You're not sitting there pushing all these buttons. Your avatar is just acting like you and gesturing based on the intensity of your voice. So this is the state of the 3D web today. And these applications have matured to a place where I really believe that they are ready to enter the enterprise, and they're going to revolutionize. This year, I believe, is the year that these applications are really going to revolutionize how we learn and how we collaborate online.
Thank you, David. Thank you so much. Manu, why don't you tell us about what's happening out in the gaming world?
Great, thanks. Hi everyone, welcome. My name is Manu Gambhir. I'm the CEO of a social gaming company called Rising. Rising specializes in online social games that...
I did?
Sorry. I'll continue. So Rising specializes in social games where people play in online communities to help raise money for charities, while also competing to win cash and prizes for themselves. So in short, it's charitable gaming online. I'm also an avid gamer, and as well, from time to time, I consult with folks in the casino industry to help them kind of think about how virtual worlds and their core gaming businesses will interact in the future. And there's a lot of interesting things that are in thought and under development on that front. So I saw a good show of hands earlier about people who have engaged in social gaming. So I just wanted to touch very briefly on kind of what is social gaming, what does it represent financially today. Social gaming is part of the larger $50 billion video game industry that we have here in the US. And it's still developing. It's a 3 or 4 year old business. It's expected to generate about $1 billion, $1.5 billion in revenue this year in the US and about $7 billion globally. So for a 3 to 4 year old business that's growing quite quickly, and it's rapidly becoming a form of mass market entertainment. So it's having an impact on the amount of time people are spending watching television or going to the movies. And so in recognition of this kind of shift of people's entertainment time, large media companies are making large investments into the space of social gaming. I can cite Disney as a big example of that from last year. They spent about $500 million to buy a social gaming company in order to start to move their proprietary content and assets into the social gaming space. This year, interestingly, about 1 in 4 people in the US are playing a social game on large social networks like Facebook at least once a month. So 25% of the population is currently playing social games, and it's rising dramatically. So I think all of this and how it's relevant to the conversation or discussion that we're having today is that social gaming is kind of setting the stage, I believe, in some way to habituate people towards, taking their jobs and working with people in virtual environments. Unlike the hardcore video gaming, the World of Warcraft, the Halo games, which appeal to a narrower slice of serious gamers, social games appeal to everybody. It's a mass market type of activity, and it's bringing people into a comfort zone with these new types of technologies and making them more comfortable as those technologies appear in the workplace. So I'm looking forward to a good discussion.
Great. Thank you, Manu. And David, you mentioned the fact that how 3D world is so important to social media, but we have Facebook, which is very two-dimensional in nature. So let me start with asking Manu, why do you think, why is 3D world so important and to gaming industry and the 3D world and the virtual world that we create in gaming industry?
So in the gaming industry in large, and the hardcore games that are really for the dedicated gamers, 3D has been a long-standing part of the core mechanics and the game experience. From the world that I'm in these days of social gaming, it's emerging. Social games are more casual, lighthearted games. They're played in the browser, and not everybody has access to the kind of state-of-the-art technology that David is going to show later today. So in social games, the 3D is typically more what we can call a pseudo-type 3D. And the purpose of social games is really the game is a means to an end. The end is socializing, interacting, communicating with other people. And the 3D just provides a much more natural way to interface with other people and communicate.
So you think it is critical to social gaming industry, or you don't think it is critical?
I think that 3D is important for social gaming. It's showing through financially. So I can cite a recent example. One of the largest social gaming companies called Zynga, which many of you have heard of, their prime product called Farmville, launched a game called Cityville just about 6 weeks ago. It's acquired almost 100 million users just in the last 6 weeks. Fastest growing product in the history of mankind, actually. And that is a pseudo 3D game, and that is credited very heavily for bringing people together and creating the level of social engagement that's being delivered.
Very interesting. And so coming back to you, David, what do you think, where will we apply these 3D applications, or how is it relevant to social media or to the virtual world in enterprise? What do you think about that?
Well, I think there are certain applications that lend themselves to a 3D environment, and there are some that don't. Face-to-face or one person to one person, it's hard to beat Skype. It works really well. And when you get hundreds of people in a room listening to someone talk up on the platform, 3D doesn't really buy you much there either. But there's a sweet spot between 3 people and 60 people where you're interacting with the audience and you want to see who's looking at who. You want to have people move around and participate with the content and their laser pointers and things. And that's where it really creates a unique experience. It's very, very similar to like a telepresence room. But whereas telepresence is very, very expensive, a 3D browser application offers the same things that the telepresence room offers, but it does it at amazingly less cost, and it's more accessible. Anyone with a browser can use it. And so those are applications where that I think, especially online learning, collaboration, anything done in that group of people, synchronously between 3 and 60 people, I think is really the spot for 3D.
So you're saying within the enterprise where we're trying to engage an audience, that's where we can actually use this environment or 3D environment, as you would say?
Absolutely, and I don't want to recap what I talked about in the engagement session too much, but it's all about engagement. If your people are engaged, they're learning, they're retaining what they learned, they're participating, there's creativity there for problem solving, there's all the stuff that you want out of that meeting if your people are engaged. And keeping them engaged remotely, it has a level of difficulty that's much higher. It's hard to do it in person, but it's really hard. And I mentioned this before. There was a study of people learning in a WebEx environment, which is a 2D screen sharing environment. 60% of the people taking the class were not on the WebEx screen throughout the majority of the class. And so they weren't even seeing the content being presented. In a 3D environment where you feel immersed, where you see people turn and look at you when you start talking, you know, it's a very different experience. When you can nod your head that you agree or give someone a quizzical look, keeps you involved. You're not a passive bystander. You're an active participant. And that keeps us engaged.
Okay.
And that's where the magic happens.
So do you think the 3D laptop and the 3D TV will have any impact on this? Or is that technology different?
Well, I think it's very different. I mean, TV is a passive medium. And when we talk about the 3D web, we're talking about something that you are immersed in. And so I think we share 3D, but that's about where the similarities
you don't want people to wear glasses and watch.
No one has to wear glasses to use a web-based 3D apps.
You know, the HP announced in CES they have a 3D laptop now. So that was interesting thought there. So how do you think the 3D requirements for gaming are different for the enterprise?
So focusing on social gaming, social gaming is, again, it's because it's casual games, people play it predominantly in a browser. And so you don't know, what type of video hardware they have necessarily, or what type of underlying, memory or other specs that the computer might have. So as a result, in order to achieve the maximum penetration to the mass audience, many of these games are reaching tens of millions of people with very diverse hardware environments, and people across the world who may be on very slow internet connections, or here in the U.S. where people may have some of the most advanced hardware. It's really kept to a baseline in terms of that. And so what we're seeing today, that's working, and I think I will echo a point that David is making about social engagement. It's the same thing in social gaming. As I said before, it's about connecting people, and it's about how well they engage together. So true 3D is a great way to do that, but pseudo 3D, or 2.5D as it's called, does the job quite well, and it's getting tens of millions of people to play these games.
Common question for you guys then. Do you think Facebook will go 3D at some point? Just like Second Life? I mean,
I guess responding first, I don't see that happening. Facebook, there's a number of reasons, I guess. Facebook is accessible over many platforms. People are, I think 50% people use Facebook through their phones. So to be a 3D platform, is negated by that. But really, Facebook is an environment where other application developers can build their applications. So our games, for example, sit inside of Facebook. And I think it's already happening. I mean, 3D is becoming an increasing part of the game experience in Facebook games. As competition is rising, budgets for game development are rising, that brings 3D into the mix. And I think also, Facebook is about socialization, connecting with other people. I'm sure some of you have either experienced or heard about a product called IMView, which is a 3D meetup type of platform. You just interact and hang out with other people. It's predominantly kind of used by teenage college crowd at this point. But I see that becoming, a part of Facebook, but from third-party companies. So I don't think Facebook will go 3D, but there'll be more 3D in Facebook.
Okay.
I think there's another issue there too, is that a lot of Facebook, although Facebook has chat and other things now, predominantly I think Facebook is a asynchronous modality. People post things on their wall, and then other people, when they have time, they log in and they read it. And I think the real power of 3D, of having an avatar represent you in a group, is the synchronous experience of all being together. So I agree with Manu. I don't really see a fit there. Now, I would see a fit with companies like Meetup.com, where I think 3D could just take the business model that they have now and remove the geographic limitations that the model currently has. And so I would see that as probably a much more natural fit.
Okay. So you mentioned something about avatars in there. That brings up an interesting topic. I had a question on that. Let me think about. What do you think avatars are so important in this 3D immersive world? Do you think they are important per se?
Well, 3D covers a lot. I mean, if you're talking about interactive, synchronous, exchanges for learning or collaboration, and that's really what I'm focused on, the avatar is critical, because without an avatar, you can't communicate focus. And focus is what is so engaging. Being able to see where someone is looking. You ask, who said that? Well, who'd they say it to? That changes the meaning of what's going on. I was teaching a class inside of our environment a few weeks ago, and everyone was working in their private browser, and I said, everyone look up here, I want you to see this slide. And I waited until I saw them all look up, which are things that you can't do unless you're represented by an avatar. Focus is important. When everyone turns and looks at you, your energy level spikes, which is very engaging. And we subtly vote with our focus. Two people start talking, we'll look at the one that we want to hear, and the other person will shut up. And so we kind of vote, and it helps the conversation move along. But this is why we get on a plane and fly, across country for a meeting. We may not even know what it is, but we know we want it, that in-person experience.
It's so very true, but I know that avatars are important to gaming because we want to represent ourselves in some way, power, stronger or something, I don't know. But the focus then shifts towards avatar. And do you think that will distract you from what business purpose of the meeting is, and you will be focused on what avatars are doing? What do you think about that?
Well, if you're sitting there hitting all these buttons to make your avatar work, yes, it becomes distracting. And this is the difference between 3D for games versus 3D. Like if you're playing Xbox, it's all about driving the avatar. You have lots of buttons to manage weapons and to fly, and it's the mastery of all those buttons is what you're trying to. It's about the tool.
Right.
3D for business is not about the tool. The tool needs to be amazingly simple. It needs to get out of the way so you can get down to learning or whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. And so the avatar needs to be very self-driven. And we do things like you set the intensity level that you tend to use your hands while you're talking. Then we have your avatar, based on the intensity of your voice, gesture naturally with the hands. So you're not pushing any buttons to make that happen. We know from looking at hundreds of hours of video that the average person seating, if you watch Manu and I up here, about every 100 to 130 seconds, we shifted our position, because that's what people do. And so we have your avatar do that automatically, but only the postures that are typical for you. So once you set up your avatar to act like you, it just acts like you. And that's the part that the avatar has to be much more self-driven for business applications, because you want to spend less time thinking about it.
So very true. And I think that's a discussion that's going around in the virtual world, whether avatars play that important a role as in this whole industry or not. So I think you bring a very good perspective to that, and I think you will show us something later today, right, on that. Okay, and so let's move on to the next area of questioning, which I had here. Let me think about. So do you think there's this virtual economy coming into place? We are talking about virtual goods, we are talking about virtual currency. Where are we going with this?
So I think we're going somewhere very profitable with this. Virtual goods in 2010, people spent $7.3 billion buying virtual goods, and it's growing very rapidly. What are virtual goods? Virtual goods in a game called Ravenwood Fair on Facebook are hot dogs. They sold several $1 million worth of hot dogs in virtual worlds. In games like Farmville, you buy your tractors, you buy your lands. These are generally small ticket, instant gratification items that are being purchased that build up these large sums of industry figures. But it's spawning a very interesting new industry of people who are becoming creators and manufacturers of virtual goods, and that's all they do. And they then supply them to game developers or other application developers. So there are companies now out there who they create the hot dog. the game developer who then buys it from these people because their hot dog looks really good. It has good effects on the graphics.
Interesting.
So that's happening.
And so you see lawnmowers coming from various companies into the play?
I see everything coming, into that space. And, while virtual events, and that is not my particular field, I mean, I can see that virtual goods in an event type of scenario can also drive a lot of revenue, where attendees may wish to purchase, content or more literature or other things that is being sold, through the virtual venue. It's become a huge industry. It's growing very rapidly. Social gaming is at the forefront of driving that. Yeah.
So David, what do you think about that?
Well, it's not my area of expertise, but I would agree with Manu there. I think virtual goods are going to be relevant because of what Manu said. They're very, very profitable. You create one virtual shirt. It takes up no shelf space. You don't have to manufacture the second one, and you can sell it 1 million times. Business will figure out a way to make you want that. And people buy virtual goods, I think, for the same reasons that they buy real goods. You buy a shirt because you like the way you look in it, the way you feel wearing it. People buy virtual items for the exact same reason. So I think we're going to see a lot from virtual goods.
Thank you, David. Now we are running short on time here, so I'll open the for Q&A from the floor. I had a bigger list of questions, but let the floor ask the questions now.
David, I'm curious. I'm curious to know how the new WebGL or HTML5, these standards might affect 3D immersive environments where maybe you move into a space where you don't need downloads or plugins, or how that might change the space.
I get asked that question a lot, so you think I'd have a better answer. But I really don't. We'll have to see. Hope if it makes it easier for us to build 3D environments, and I'm not an HTML expert by any means, but I would think you need a tremendous graphical performance to do 3D and on the video card. It can't typically run interpretively, and so I don't know. My gut feeling is that you're going to need an installed application to get the kind of performance that you want in a 3D environment. But I don't know.
So as a follow-up, you think that it'll be a while before we see them on mobile devices or on mobile devices, as you would put it?
I don't know. Everything seems to be going mobile, so I know that 3D is really, really hard. To run on all the low-end video cards and through the firewalls and proxy servers and integrate the content and integrate VoIP. It's like every application I've ever written in my life combined into one. And then we just finished taking 1 million lines of code and porting it over to the Mac. We spent a year doing this, and when we're done, we have what we had a year ago, but it runs on the Mac. And so it's just this is one of the things holding 3D back, is that it is it's the most complex software in the world. Especially to make it look that simple.
Yeah, Gartner had said that everyone will have an avatar. Please.
Hi, I'm Catherine Upton with eLearning Magazine. Manu, have you developed any social gaming for the learning environment? If so, with whom? And what'd you do for them?
Well, this company, Rising, is not focused on the learning environment. It's focused on what we call online charitable gaming. So it's lighthearted fun that intends to raise money for good causes. And as a inducement to that, people win cash and prizes while they're playing. That being said, I also invest in other companies, and I am an investor in a company that is doing just what you asked about, which is social games for learning for kids. And I think that it's as a father of 2 young children, I think it's a phenomenal area that needs to be really explored. Kids are on the iPad and iPhones and all of these gadgets all day long, so they absorb information from there very quickly. And this particular company that I invested in is looking at, how to bring the whole family, grandparents, parents, into kind of a family social environment, a slightly more protected social environment, to give the kids rewards, slight fun competition. And we've been testing or piloting this environment in a group of about 500 people, and it's had phenomenally good uptake. So I think it's very early in terms of social learning in that sense, but I think that there's a huge latent market, for that in the coming years.
Are there any other questions? We don't have anything from anybody on Twitter yet in question format, so I think that they're listening rapidly.
Thank you.
Should I do the demo now?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so David will show you an immersive world of 3D meeting.
Yep. Guys, this is a 3D environment that is loaded. I've actually gone full screen here, but if you look, you're just in a browser. And I hit the Create Meeting button, and I selected a venue, and I'll go full screen just to make it a little more larger. I've asked two of my colleagues from the East Coast to join us here. This is Tina Romero to my right. I'll zoom in on her. Can you say hi, Tina?
Hey, guys.
And and this is over onto my left-hand side. This is Lowell Briscoe. Hi, Lowell.
Hi, guys.
I can make their names appear, so if you forget, this is how I never forget people's names in meetings. But we're here, and you can see I'm just using my mouse. I drag where I want to look. We've got some content up on the viewer here, so if I want to zoom in, it's kind of hard to read that, but if I take my mouse wheel, I can zoom in and read it. If I want to interact with content, I can double click on it, and you see that it floats here in interaction mode. So here I can change slides. If I wanted to, we could also all whiteboard over top of this. I could say, oh, let's just remove this whole screen sharing section and move it over to down over here on this side. I can right click and say clear this content. And to load new content, I'd simply grab it and drag it onto the screen here. Or I've got some that I've already preloaded. I can screen share. I can share a webcam. If I want to share some preloaded content, I can just select it here. And if I want to size it or move it around, I've got a tool here for doing that. I can size it. And they're seeing what I'm doing here in real time. Now, they have laser pointers. Lowell, use your laser pointer. You just push down on your mouse wheel, and so we can all see exactly where we're pointing and interact with the content that way. So Tina, we've got gesture icons here. We can nod our head. You'll notice this is me in the upper right-hand corner nodding my head. Tina, I realize that I've asked you it's getting late on the East Coast. How do you feel about working late tonight? Little nonverbal communication there. And Lowell, we have facial expressions too. Are you surprised to be working this late, Lowell? Show me your surprised face. And he's just using the wheel of expression here for doing gestures and mode. The main things that we do is we can nod our heads. This is emphasis in the middle, so when I'm talking. Now you'll notice while I'm talking, my avatar here in the upper left-hand corner is gesturing some just naturally based on the intensity of my voice. I also can make emphasis by clicking here. Single click is a light emphasis. Double click is a big emphasis. People can keep up with about this many icons while they're talking. So this is, as I look back and forth at Lowell and Tina, we look back up at the content. Now Tina, I know you're not looking at the content. Okay, now you're Tina, look at the content for me. So I can, up on the screen. So now I can tell where she's looking. She makes a comment, I can tell who she's making it to. The other thing is we have a chat feature here where we can all chat, or we can create private chat rooms. I can invite them into a private chat room here on the fly if I wanted to. The gestures here are like palms up. These are cross-cultural gestures. Palms up across all cultures means I need something, lack of something, I don't have something. So I can single click it, or I can double click it for a high profile version. Also we have click and hold. So here if I click and hold, my hand's going to keep doing that until I release. So it feels like I'm really doing that gesture. Now I don't have to use any of these. I can close all of these and just look and talk, and I don't have to, but if I want to do emphasis, I can. I can select all kinds of interesting emphasis here if I want to do that. And this is where we change our postures from very formal to very informal. Let me show you, there's dial-in numbers. So if you don't have a headset, you can just use the dial-in numbers and we'll turn your phone into a VoIP headset. As you're talking to your phone, your avatar's mouth syncs up. So you really don't need anything but a browser. That's it, bottom line. And you don't need a high-end video card. It can be a 7-year-old video card. It will still run this application. We use less bandwidth than WebEx, mainly because we avoid screen sharing. And the reason you can do screen sharing here, but we found that about 85% of the time in these meetings and learning classes, you didn't need real-time screen sharing. What you needed was static content like PowerPoint and movies. So we pre-distribute that content down, and when I change a slide, I'm just sending a 2K command down to go to the next slide. So everyone's looking at the content running locally, but I'm controlling it centrally. That leaves all the bandwidth available for low bandwidth users and for people that want better quality sounding VoIP. So the last thing that I'll show you is and there are lots of great features, interactive tools here for voting, and there's shared browser. If I wanted to bring up an integrated browser here. And if you want to interact with something, you double click on it and it floats in interaction mode. So now I can interact with this browser or whatever content application that I'm using. And finally, I'm going to just hit close all content. The last thing I was going to show you, if I can remember what it was, is the ability to see your students in the room. And again, you can ask people to stand up and present. If I want to navigate, you know how you're walking into walls or trying to hit the arrow keys? I just right-click the floor and say, walk here. My avatar walks there. And if I want to sit down, I just right-click and say, sit here. So there are no navigation issues to learn or things like that. But anyway, we have if anyone would like a free account to log in and play with this, just let me know.
So I have one question from Twitter, and then I think we need to wrap up.
Okay.
Rich S.A. asks, how can we avoid the dangers of disconnecting from RL, damaging society and family, keeping social gaming in check?
That's definitely a Manu question.
Everyone's looking at me. I think that comes down to a personal responsibility, right? We just need to keep in check what's important in our own priorities and just be able to ensure that we follow that. So it certainly can be too much. I see that at home with my kids, so we help govern that. But eventually they need to learn how to do that for themselves, and we all need to do the same.
Yeah, I think that actually if you can get on a plane and go see family members or business associates, do it. That's the far best way to do it. But if you can't, you can certainly get FaceTime and feel like you've shared a face-to-face experience with them using the technology. So I think it actually can enhance our relationships.
I'd also just say really quick that how do you get them to disconnect from the TV? What's the difference? So thank you, everybody, and thank you all for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.